If today you feel a weariness that cannot be explained by the body alone, if there is an internal pressure that comes not from chaos, but from constant effort, this message understands you. There is a kind of pain that does not arise from error, but from fidelity to the right path. It is the pain of those who keep moving forward without immediate signs, of those who do their part and still face silence. Job lived exactly there. He was not out of place, he was not misaligned, he had not made bad decisions. He was blameless, disciplined, reverent, and yet his life was shaken to its most fragile point. His health deteriorated, his body was covered in open wounds, his strength was exhausted, and his only action was to scrape his own skin with a piece of pottery, sitting on ashes, without clear answers, without quick relief. The physical pain was real, but the silence was heavier. Because when the body hurts, the mind resists, but when heaven is silent, the soul questions. Job did not cry out to be seen. He did not negotiate his faith to escape suffering. He did not feign strength, he remained. To remain when no one applauds is one of the highest forms of spiritual maturity. To remain when there are no visible signs demands a strength not learned in easy days. Job did not know that silence was not abandonment. He did not know that his story was not ending in the ashes. He did not know that while everything seemed still, something profound was being adjusted within him. And perhaps today you are at that same point, not retreating, not visibly advancing, but being worked on at a level that is not yet seen. Because there are processes that make no noise, announce no progress, and offer no immediate comfort, but they prepare a foundation that only time reveals. And even if you don't understand it now, even if the silence weighs heavily, even if the waiting tires you, what is forming within you is not fragile. It is structure, it is character, it is depth, and that, though unseen today, sustains everything that will come next. Job didn't just lose visible things. He lost the narrative that sustained his world. He lost the logic of, if I do good, everything will go well. And that's what most disorients a disciplined mind, when life stops responding to the rules that always worked. His friends arrived with quick explanations, cliches, comfortable theories. They tried to fit his pain into simple formulas, because accepting that suffering can come even when everything is done well is too uncomfortable. But Job didn't need explanations. He needed meaning. And he didn't receive it immediately. All he received was a silent invitation to go deeper. Amidst the wounds, the weariness, the loneliness, Job held on to something few hold on to, inner integrity. He didn't deny his pain. He didn't mask his anguish. He didn't become cynical. He spoke with God from the wound, not from appearance, and that is maturity. Because there's an enormous difference between demanding from ego and expressing from truth. Job didn't understand the why, but he kept affirming the who. And therein lies a key that transforms long processes. When you don't understand what's happening, but you keep trusting in who governs the process, something within you aligns. God's silence wasn't indifference, it was depth. It wasn't punishment, it was formation. There are stages when heaven doesn't respond quickly, because a quick answer would prevent character from being completed. Job was being led to a broader level of consciousness, where faith no longer depended on visible rewards, but on internal conviction. And that transition hurts. It hurts because it breaks old expectations. It hurts because it demands letting go of the need for control, but it also cleanses. It cleanses faith of hidden interests. It cleanses the relationship with God of silent negotiations. Job didn't emerge from that process physically stronger immediately. He emerged clearer. And clarity always precedes restoration. Perhaps today you are also at a point where answers aren't coming, but the questions are being refined. And that, though uncomfortable, is a sign of real growth. There's a point in Job's story that almost no one observes carefully. The moment his faith ceases to be a habit and becomes a conscious choice. Before, believing was natural, almost automatic. After the loss, believing became a daily act of decision. And that transition marks people forever. Because when faith no longer depends on visible results, it becomes stable. Job didn't cling to the idea that everything will get better soon. He clung to something deeper, the conviction that his life still had meaning, even without understanding the end. And that changes how a person navigates time. Time stopped being an enemy and became a territory of formation. While his body was weak, his inner self grew stronger. While his name seemed forgotten, his identity was consolidated. Job learned something that is only learned in long processes. The true restoration doesn't start from the outside. It starts when the mind stops resisting reality and the heart stops demanding immediate explanations. Not because the questions disappear, but because they cease to govern. And when that happens, something aligns within. Pain no longer disorganizes. Waiting no longer humiliates. Silence no longer destroys. It becomes space. Space to review beliefs, to clear expectations, to redefine what truly matters. Job stopped measuring his life by what he had lost and began, even without realizing it, to prepare to sustain what would come next. Because there are blessings that cannot reach a fragile mind or an immature heart. They need structure, they need internal stability. And that stability is not built in easy days. It is built when no one is watching, when applause disappears, and when the only company is one's own conscience. Perhaps today, you're experiencing something similar. Not a visible tragedy, but a silent internal reorganization. A period where everything seems stopped, but in reality it's being refined. And even if you don't perceive it now, that internal adjustment will be exactly what will allow you to sustain, without losing yourself, what you have been asking for so long. Most people believe that the hardest part of any process is the beginning, but that isn't true. The hardest part is sustaining yourself when time stretches on and nothing external confirms that continuing was worth it. Job reached that point. He was no longer at the start of pain, he was in the permanence of it. And permanence exhausts more than beginnings. Remaining requires a silent strength that is not learned through speeches, but through lived experience. There were days when Job woke up exactly as he had the day before, with pain, with silence, with the same absence of answers. And even so, he did not deviate. Not because he was strong all the time, but because he had decided not to break with himself. This is a deep lesson. There are moments when the greatest victory is not moving forward quickly, but refusing to betray yourself. Not betraying what you know, not betraying what you have built internally, not betraying the truth that sustained you before the crisis. Job understood, even without words, that giving up his integrity to relieve the pain would mean losing far more than material possessions. He would lose his center. And when a person loses their center, no external restoration is ever enough. That is why the process was long, not because God was delaying, but because the interior needed to become firm. There are internal structures that only solidify under prolonged pressure. Patience, for example, is not formed in short waiting, but in repeated waiting. Humility is not born from recognition, but from anonymity. Mature faith does not arise when everything works, but when nothing responds. Job was being prepared to sustain a restoration that would not be small. And this explains something important. When life seems to demand more from you than feels fair, it may not be to punish you, but to expand you. To expand your capacity to remain, to manage, to lead your own mind. Perhaps today your process is invisible to others, but it is deeply decisive for your future. Because whoever learns to remain without losing themselves also learns how to receive without being destroyed. There's something almost no one notices in Job's story. While everything outside seemed lost, his inner world was gaining order. And inner order always precedes external abundance. Before, his faith was based on results. Now it was based on conviction. Before, his relationship with God was through what he received. Now, it was through what he understood. This transition is silent and often solitary. No one applauds someone who learns to wait with dignity. No one celebrates someone who keeps doing the right thing when there's no guarantee of reward. But that's exactly where the mind becomes stable. Job stopped fighting against time. He stopped measuring each day by what was missing. And when a person stops fighting the process stops wearing them down. Not because the pain disappears immediately, but because it no longer disorganizes. Suffering ceases to be chaotic and becomes formative. There's a huge difference between enduring and sustaining. Enduring is resisting by gritting your teeth. Sustaining is accepting without giving up. Job learned to sustain. He learned to live with uncertainty without losing his identity. And that completely changes the kind of future a person can receive. Because there are blessings that cannot fit into an anxious mind. There are restitutions that cannot survive in an impatient heart. The double portion Job would receive later was not just material. It was proportional to the depth that had been built within him. And that depth cannot be improvised. It is cultivated day by day in silence, in coherence, in small, invisible decisions. Perhaps today you are also learning to sustain. Not to flee, not to break, not to negotiate your values for quick relief. And even if it seems nothing is changing now, something fundamental has already changed. Your way of being in the process. When that adjusts, the future stops being a threat and begins to become a natural consequence. Because those who strengthen themselves internally do not fear what comes next. They are ready to receive it without losing themselves. There comes a moment in every profound process where the change has already happened internally, but it hasn't yet manifested externally. That is the most delicate point because it demands trust without evidence. Job was exactly there. He no longer argued with God out of desperation, no longer sought explanations to calm his anxiety. He had learned to inhabit silence without breaking. And when a person reaches that state, something stabilizes irreversibly. The external may take time to respond, but the internal is no longer disorganized. That is true spiritual and emotional maturity. Job stopped living by waiting for the end of pain and began to live with integrity within the pain. And that transformed him. Because when life stops revolving around when will it change, the mind is freed. Time ceases to be an enemy. Waiting ceases to be a punishment. It becomes space. Space to observe, to learn, to sharpen perception. Job began to see life with new eyes. He understood that not all suffering is correction, and not all delay is denial. Some stages exist to broaden the internal capacity to sustain what will come next. Because receiving in double measure is not just a matter of blessing, it's a matter of structure. Without structure, abundance becomes a burden. Without maturity, restitution becomes unstable. Job was prepared not to lose himself when everything returned. And that is a detail few consider. Restoration does not come to rescue someone fragile. It comes to honor someone firm. Perhaps today you are firmer than you imagine. Perhaps the process has already done its part in you, even if you don't yet see visible results. And if that is the case, the remaining time is not punishment, it is transition. Transition between who you were when you started and who you need to be to sustain what you are asking for. When that transition is complete, external change ceases to be a surprise. It becomes coherence. Because everything that matures internally, sooner or later finds its form externally. And then comes the moment that no one can force. The moment when the external begins to align with the internal. Not by pressure, not by insistence, but by coherence. In Job's story, restoration did not come as an impulsive act. It came as a consequence of a character that no longer broke, of a faith that no longer depended on results, of a mind that learned to remain without hardening. When God spoke, Job was already prepared to listen without fear. When life began to give back, Job already knew how to receive without losing himself, and that changes everything. Because there are people who desire restitution, but they do not desire the process that makes them capable of sustaining it. Job went through that entire process. That is why he received a double portion, not as an emotional prize, but as a confirmation of maturity. Abundance did not come to fill a void. It came to accompany an already firm structure, and that difference is fundamental. Because when restitution comes to an anxious mind, it becomes a new source of worry. But when it comes to a stable mind, it becomes peace. Job did not return to the life he had before. He returned different, more conscious, more humble, more profound. And that version of him was capable of managing more without losing his center. Perhaps today you are not waiting for visible riches, but rather an answer, a turn, a confirmation that all this time was not in vain. And it is important to understand something. When the process changes you internally, nothing was in vain. Even before seeing results, there was already gain. You gained clarity, you gained firmness, you gained internal mastery. And that is what guarantees that when external change arrives, it will not disorganize you. Because the real risk is not losing everything, it is recovering it without being ready. Job was ready. And if you continue to sustain the process with that same silent coherence, you will be too, not by merit, but by preparation. Job's story doesn't end with applause, it ends with understanding. Understanding that time was not an enemy, it was an ally. That silence was not punishment, it was formation. That waiting was not loss, it was preparation. Everything that seemed like a delay was, in reality, aligning something deeper. Job received a double portion, yes. But the most valuable thing was not what returned to his hands, but what could no longer be taken from him. A firm mind, a purified faith, an identity that did not depend on circumstances. And that is what keeps this story alive today. Because there are people who don't need a quick explanation. They need sustained direction. They don't need a momentary boost. They need daily clarity, so they don't break along the way. There are processes that are not overcome with a single message, but with constancy, with silent reminders, with guidance that accompanies when external noise doesn't help. If today this message touched something in you, it's not because you are delayed, it's because you are in the middle of the process. And the middle of the process is the place where the most support is needed. There are those who advance better when they have a daily reference, a short and practical reading that organizes the mind, aligns the heart, and restores direction without exaggeration. Not to accelerate time, but to go through it with integrity. Because whoever learns to walk with constancy does not need to run when life changes. Not everything transforms quickly, but everything that is well built remains. And when it remains, it multiplies. If this message found you, remember this. You are not alone, you are not out of place, and you are not wasting time. You are being prepared to sustain something greater without losing yourself. And that, even if it is not visible now, is already a form of restitution.